Hello, welcome back. It's Christopher Taylor with Sovereign Harmony. Good to have you back. We are going to go over the July 2025 astrology. So still plenty going on this year in 2025. I want to break it down, month to month. If you want to follow more weekly updates, I do Instagram lives every Sunday. More semi-daily updates, do follow on either Instagram or Facebook. That's going to be Sovereign Harmony Astrology in both cases. But here on YouTube, I will post those weekly Instagrams as well as these weekly updates and webinars. So I have the webinar that I did most recently, which is on this Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is one of the themes of this month and this summer in general. And you can check that out on my YouTube channel. That's Christopher Taylor Sovereign Harmony. And so why don't we just get into this here for July 2025. So here's a list of the general themes for the month. Like I said, like I alluded to earlier here, Saturn conjunction Neptune. This is something that happens every 37 years. It's a very major cycle. We're approaching the Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries. That'll be in February of 2026. As far as the summer goes, from June 9th to August 23rd, so July is right smack dab in the middle of that, we have Saturn and Neptune within a 1-degree orb. So they're in an almost conjunction, a preview of what's on the horizon. So we're ending the most recent Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which started in 1989. And in 1989, if you listen to my webinar, I dive deep into this, but that is really that transection where we ended the Iron Curtain / Cold War period in world history. Okay, where it was like, you take a side. You're either with the capitalists or with the communists, right? And what happened in 1989 when Saturn conjuncted Neptune in Capricorn was the Berlin Wall came down. The symbol of that Iron Curtain, the symbol of the Cold War came down, and something new was birthed. And that something new, Saturn conjunction Neptune in Capricorn, is what I call the global corporatocracy. Okay, this is the pretend to have parties still when in reality, no matter which party you're in politically, you're all part of the globalist system, unless you're not. So that's really what's happened in the last 37 years, is that you either have people that are with the globalists or those who are in a way of the globalist. And we have, someone in office in the US right now who is a perfect example of someone in the way of the globalists. Okay. But in any case, that globalist corporatocracy is coming to its end here with Saturn conjuncting Neptune. Okay, so in the Saturn conjunct Neptune at 0 degrees Aries coming in February, I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is a clean slate. This is a starting point. This is the transfer of external authority to more sovereign internal authority. Okay, and what we see with the No Kings protests a couple weeks ago, anyone that still has that paradigm needs a little inner work to get to where we're going with the Saturn-Neptune conjunction Aries, because it's going to take some more self-responsibility and sovereignty when it comes to authority, rather than externalizing it and therefore being mad at who you perceive as a king or king-like because you can't internalize your authority. But in any case, that's part of what these next several months are about with Saturn conjunct Neptune in Aries in 1-degree orb. Is we're warming up to this major transition, and you can see the panic, you can see the desperation happening in the greater world, where this globalist order is falling apart, and they're making desperate moves, and they don't like the fact that power is being transferred energetically from those external, the small group externally, to each individual internally. Okay, what is that going to look like? We just had this new moon here. In fact, it was yesterday. Today is June 26th as I'm recording this. So June 25th, we have this new moon in Cancer, conjunct Jupiter and squaring this Saturn-Neptune conjunction Aries. So really, that is forming the foundation for the next 6 to 8 months and where we're headed with this societal evolution. Okay. And so what is also happening this month and into most of August as well is that Saturn-Neptune within 1-degree orbit of each other in Aries. Pluto is in Aquarius. It is retrograde as we speak, and it's going to back into an exact sextile 60 degrees away from that 1-degree orb between Saturn and Neptune. So this is starting to bring more of that societal evolution into play. Okay, so that's the first thing we'll look at. It's kind of looking at this in one giant energetic form instead of breaking it down into pieces, and just to see what that looks like here. So there's that Saturn Neptune almost conjunction in early Aries, and then 60 degrees away we have Pluto retrograde. There's that little R. It's in Aquarius. It's not going to leave Aquarius. It's not going to back into Capricorn. It's done with Capricorn, and but Pluto in Aquarius has a lot to do with where we're headed in the future as a society. Okay, and then the fact that they're in this sextile is this opportunity for this transformation. So this inevitable transformation that will start here, initiate in the numerological 1 year of 2026, in February of 2026 is the exact conjunction at 0 degrees Aries. So we're in this societal preparation. So on an individual level, we are having to do some inner work to be prepared for where we're headed, something again that those in power with globalist special interests are not happy about, but have to deal with. And they know about it. I mean, it's, in my opinion, they're, anyone in a position of power is well versed in astrology and when to act, essentially on certain policies and things like that. But in any case, this is an energy in the background. It won't be in our faces, just in the background, like a stew that's in the back burner of the stove, awaiting us to eat it here in early 2026. Okay. The next thing on the list, notice Neptune, and we have Saturn here on the list. They'll both be turning retrograde at about 2 degrees Aries. So again, they're within a 1 degree orbit of each other. We're getting this preview of Saturn, Neptune, and Aries in this summer, but now they're about to backtrack here, and they're both going to re-enter Pisces here in the fall for several months before they re-enter Aries in the early part of 2026 and then make their conjunction in February. So we're dipping in here. We're warming up, okay? And so this Neptune retrograde in Aries looks like this. There's Neptune. Of course, it's with Saturn. Just to kind of show you where it is. But it's something that happens like half the year, every year. Neptune's going to turn retrograde. This is its first time retrograde in Aries in our lifetimes, for sure. And what it's done is given us a preview with Neptune and Aries the last couple months, has brought into our awareness a sort of our what I want to call our soul contracts. Okay, Aries has to do with the nitty gritty, down to earth. Here we are. Let's get it done. Let's be real in our bodies kind of energy. And Neptune is, of course, the etheric. It is our, think of it as our higher self, our highest selves, trying to embody itself into this earthly being. Okay. And so it's just like this reminder of who we really are, how big we really are. Okay. And so think of that as being on the back burner, like I said, and that'll come back into play in 2026. Okay. The next thing on the list here is Uranus into Gemini. So we've had a lot of the outer planets moving into new signs. We had Pluto back in November, moving into Aquarius for good, for good as in the next 20 years or so. Then we had both Saturn and Neptune entering Aries, and we just had Jupiter enter Cancer just recently. And now we have Uranus, which only switches signs once every 7 years or so, entering Gemini. So Uranus entered Taurus back in 2018. Okay, now here it is entering Gemini as a preview, just like with Saturn and Neptune. It's going to retrograde later in the summer. It'll retrograde back to Taurus, but then it'll enter Gemini in the spring of 2026, where it'll be there for 7 years or so. So we're getting a preview of Uranus and Gemini, just to get a sense of what that has brought us in the past. So there it is at 0 degrees Gemini here, and that is going to be on July 7th, so just after the 4th of July here. And on the 4th is when Neptune turns retrograde. And just to give you an idea of what happened the last time that Uranus was in Gemini, it was in the early to mid 1940s. And this was when technological advancements, when it comes to like nuclear technology, but also other technologies were advancing rapidly because of World War II, and that became adaptable to everyday life, especially in first world nations like the U.S., for example. Things like televisions and whatnot that came roaring through our awareness in our everyday lives in the 1950s, et cetera. It all came out of this technology that was rapidly advanced during World War II. Even the earliest forms of the internet, okay, came out of the World War II era, okay, because there was, different ways of communicating over long distances, et cetera, et cetera. So what was developed at that time eventually evolved into what we now know as the internet. Here I am, on the internet here with my own YouTube channel and different social media platforms that I can send this out on. So a different paradigm of existence that would have existed back then. So Uranus has to do with those technological advancements, and the fact that we have Pluto and Aquarius as well, Aquarius being ruled by Uranus, especially when Uranus and Pluto come into their exact trine, which they'll be in and out of over the next couple of years. It's a very exciting time for rapid advancements in technology. Okay, and with Uranus and Gemini specifically, we're talking about communication technology, but we can also see rapid advancements in medical technology, et cetera. So we'll get an exciting little preview here this summer with Uranus in Gemini. We'll see what that introduces to us, before it nestles back into Taurus for a little bit, and then maybe we'll get a sense of what is coming over the next 7 years. But I imagine if the early to mid 1940s had, as the development of technology that it had, given what was available at that time, just imagine what can happen now. Just imagine 80 years later, essentially a little, more than 80 years later, what could be developed and how fast it could develop, especially given the nature of the fact that we have things like artificial intelligence, that we have self-driving cars, we have, these things that are just the primitive forms of what they're going to become. How rapidly can things advance? How rapidly can we advance, energy technologies? Maybe suddenly we are, free energy, for example, gets released or, is accessible to people, and we can't even recognize what it used to be like, for example, as time moves on. But anyway, we won't get too deep into that, but it could be a very exciting time. But also when it comes to cyber attacks on the negative side of things, we could be seeing an increase in that as well. Okay. Because Uranus has to do with technology, Gemini has to do with communication. The internet itself is essentially a perfect example of where that can show itself. So there could be some sudden surprise disruptions with communication technology that we experience as well. So that would be on the negative side of things, just to bring it all in full circle. Next thing on here, so we're going to have a full moon and a new moon like we do every month. In this case, the full moon is going to happen at 19 degrees Capricorn on July 10th. Okay, this is what it looks like. There's the sun in Cancer, the moon in Capricorn, exactly opposite that. The ruler of Capricorn is Saturn. Saturn is sitting there with Neptune, about to turn retrograde, just like Neptune just turned retrograde a few days earlier. Saturn will turn retrograde a couple days after this full moon on, what did I say it was? It's on the 10th. Yeah, so Neptune turned retrograde about 6 days before. Saturn is going to turn retrograde about 2 days after. Okay, and what this moon is doing is, the first thing it is aspecting is a somewhat wide square, about 8 degrees square, to Chiron in Aries. It is also forming a trine to the south node and Mars in Virgo, as well as a sextile to the north node in Pisces. Okay, so what this kind of brings up here is a bit of a challenging full moon, I would say, especially with that square to Chiron. There's a sense of self-doubt that comes up here, okay? And the need to take the opportunity to put our energy into trust. Again, that's that north node, so sextile to the north node, opportunity to trust, despite the ease of which it can be to go into this kind of Mars and Virgo south node energy, which would be to dive into worry and details and things of that nature. It's kind of been a theme the last couple of months, and it just continues this summer of choosing trust over worry in general. Okay, I'm someone that has a strong Pisces Virgo axis in my chart, so I understand this dichotomy very well. Anyway, but combined with that square to Chiron and Aries, there is that sense of self-doubt when it comes to our intuition. So we're saying, okay, what has always worked for me in the past? Let's just do that, right? When faced with the situation. And what we're being asked to do is say, no, what can work this time that maybe we haven't done before? And so it's going to trigger this sense of self-doubt, like, oh, are we really capable of being sure that what we want is what's good for us, right? That's what that kind of brings up. And so the moon in Capricorn is asking us to be our own authority in a way. And part of being our own authority is that trust in ourselves. So we want to be able to recognize that, around mid-month when this full moon is active, that we're going to be tempted to go into self-doubt and worry when the point of the situation is to go into our authority and into our intuition and move through that. Okay, so a bit of a challenging full moon, but we'll get through it. Then the next thing on the list, like I said, is that Saturn retrograde at 2 degrees Aries. So just like with Neptune, they're sitting there in early Aries, still in their 1 degree orb, getting that aspect from Pluto retrograde now at this point, giving us that preview again of where society truly is headed as the globalist order is breaking down before our eyes and operating in desperation mode to keep itself alive, knowing that it is, on its way out, essentially. And so Saturn in Aries has a lot to do with self-responsibility. So we've gotten a little preview of this in the last month or two, just the idea that, like, hey, at the end of the day, we're responsible for ourselves. So even going back to that idea of that full moon just a couple of days before this, and this speaks to that, is trusting that our intuition is as important as our history, as our like what we're habitually used to, what our tried and true methods are, and that we've got to become responsible for our true path in this life. Again, in conjunction with that Neptune in Aries, the idea of our true soul operating in this body on this earth at this time. And so taking responsibility for our contracts, essentially, our soul contracts, and saying, hey, it might not look like what I saw people in my family do. It might not look like what people in my culture have done, but what am I responsible for? What did I sign up for? Okay, so we're getting this preview in 2025 for the implementation in 2026 for, hey, this is what I came for. It might look very different than anything that has been around me or that has formed me or conditioned me, but it is what I'm here to do. Okay. Next up on the list is we will have a Mercury retrograde starting on July 17th. That'll go to August 11th. It'll be entirely within the sign of Leo. So it'll turn retrograde at 15 degrees Leo on July 17th. It'll turn direct at 4 degrees Leo on August 11th. So wherever you have 4 degrees Leo to 15 degrees Leo in your chart, any planets that are there, any planets that are squaring there, so anything in fixed signs in general, so in Scorpio, in Aquarius, in Taurus, anything between 4 and 15 degrees Leo, there's going to be some challenging energy there for you. So just look to your chart, see where that falls, but how that looks here. Really, a lot of times Mercury will turn retrograde, and there's Mercury right there at 15 degrees Leo, where it will be when it turns retrograde. It'll form several aspects of different planets, etc. In this case, there's really not much going on with Mercury retrograde. So it's happening almost in isolation. I say almost because when it turns retrograde, it will be in an exact sextile to Venus, which will then be in Gemini. Right now it's in Taurus, but it'll move into Gemini at that time. And so there will be a sextile to Venus to start the retrograde, but the entire period of the retrograde, when it backs into 4 degrees Leo, and then the entire period that it moves forward before it gets back to its shadow zone, really no really big aspects to speak of for Mercury. And we will have a little bit of a warm-up for this Mercury retrograde when it enters its shadow here this Sunday. This Sunday is going to be June 29th. So do tune in to my Instagram live. Again, it's going to be Sovereign Harmony Astrology on Instagram. That's where you're going to be able to see. I'm going to talk about Mercury making some aspects to, it's going to be a trine to the Saturn-Neptune conjunction over here in Aries. So it'll trine that and then oppose Pluto just before it enters its zone. So it's, in other words, Mercury's at about 1 to 2 degrees of Leo this weekend, when we get to this weekend, and it'll be forming those aspects just before it hits 4 degrees and enters its shadow zone. Okay, so that'll be the last aspects that it makes will be to this societal evolution energy just before it wants to enter its retrograde motion. So in general, I see this as retuning ourselves refining ourselves, because Leo has to do with our confidence and our expression, etc. And with that sextile to Venus, we're kind of like rethinking, like, as the society as a whole is shifting, where do we fit in? Okay, where do we fit in? And so this Mercury retrograde is basically mid-July to mid-August period is reassessing, what are our talents? What are the things we want to express most? How can that fit into this evolving society? Okay, so it's really reassessing where we can be of best use, essentially, where we can experience in our highest fulfillment as well. Okay, so that's going to be a big theme as well. Then the final thing that we have here is this new moon in Leo, which happens within the Mercury retrograde period, which is interesting because, again, Leo having to do with that confidence and our expression. So we're looking to plant new seeds for that in the midst of a review period with Mercury retrograde right there in Leo. And note that that new moon is happening at 2 degrees Leo. Okay, so it is going to be in aspect to Uranus, fresh in Gemini, to the Saturn, Neptune, both now retrograde in Aries, but still within 1 degree orb, and opposing Pluto, which has retrograded back into an orb with the Saturn, Neptune conjunction, like we said before. So this doubles down on the idea of trying to figure out, this new moon is really about where we're going to anchor ourselves in this new awareness of where society is evolving. So we're getting this preview of where society is heading with these outer planets all in their new signs, just before in the fall when Uranus moves back into Taurus, when both Neptune and Saturn move back into Pisces, and then they'll be there until early 2026 when we get this configuration again, where this planetary system, this sets itself up in the late winter, early spring again, just as we see it here, and that's when it'll be time to move forward with our new selves in that evolved society. So things are rapidly unfolding over this summer into the fall, and this summer is an opportunity to kind of reassess where we may personally fit in. So where our sovereign selves can fit in to that greater plan. So just to review, for the month, we've got the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in early Aries. It is within 1 degree orb. Won't be exact till February, but that is a lingering 1 degree orb for the summer, essentially. Pluto is retrograding back to form a sextile to that conjunction. Both Neptune and Saturn are going to retrograde at about 2 degrees Aries, suggesting that we've just gotten a little preview of our responsibility of bringing our soul self down into this life. Uranus entering Gemini, again, first time since the 1940s, and giving us a preview of some technological advancements, rapid advancements in general in society. We've got the full moon in Capricorn that will challenge us to essentially choose trust over worry, okay? And to, move through self-doubt and understand that, like, when we tune into our authority, that part of that is our intuition, okay? It's not exclusive to that. Then we have the Mercury retrograde, which tunes in with the new moon in Leo. And in both cases, we're really reassessing and laying down the foundation for, how we're going to express ourselves, what makes us the most confident as we move through this rapidly evolving society. So to sum it up, it's a lot of societal evolution this month, self-trust, and personal reassessment. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, do comment down below on YouTube if you're seeing this on another platform other than YouTube. Also, Rumble, I have an account there as well. If you are interested in seeing how this energy plays out in your chart, I do personal readings as well. And do check out my latest webinar. It is on Rumble as well as YouTube, and that is the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. You can find it in both platforms. And, it's a little bit long, but it is worth looking into to understand where we're at, where things are moving, and where we play a role in it. So with that, I will leave you be, and have a great month, and I will see you in August, or if you're going to tune into my weekly Instagrams, I'll see you there. And if you want to get, again, more semi-daily updates, do follow on Facebook and Instagram at Sovereign Harmony Astrology. We'll catch you again later. Bye-bye.